I do everybody.
Okay, good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the Kent City Council Committee of a Whole. Today is 4 o'clock, August the 15th. We're going to get started here, and I'm going to ask Kim to start with roll call, please.
Thank you, Council President. Council President Boyce.
Here.
Councilmember Fincher.
Here.
Councilmember Kaur. Councilmember Larmer. Councilmember Michelle. Here. Councilmember Thomas.
Here.
Councilmember Troutner.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to get started. You got the agenda approval here. Any changes to the agenda, Pat? Council member?
Seeing no changes, Mr. Chair, I would move for approval of the agenda.
Second.
Motion is second. In discussion? Seeing none? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Let the record show unanimous pass. Okay, move on to item 4, business. We got the Operation Council meeting here. First thing we have is approval of the minutes.
Mr. Chair, I'd move for approval of the minutes.
Motion and a second. In discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Let the record show unanimous pass. Thank you. Okay. The train finally went by. Councilmember Kaur. We got to do something about that train, Pat. It's causing my council member to be late. Okay, let's move on to item B, Consolidating Budget Adjustment. Michelle Ferguson. Hello.
Good afternoon, Council. Michelle Ferguson, Financial Planning Manager, and I will be presenting the second quarter budget adjustment for 2023. The second quarter adjustment is reflecting an overall budget increase of $4,638,240. Previously approved budget expenditure increases total $4,248,390, and budget adjustments that have not been previously approved by Council total $389,850. The expenditure increases that Council has already approved for $4.25 million, these are all grants. So the city was awarded 2 grants totaling $2.93 million from the Washington State Department of Commerce, which were approved by Council in April of 2023 for the Mill Creek 76th Avenue South Flood Plain Stabilization Habitat Enhancement Project. The city was also awarded grant funding from WashDOT's Highway Traffic Safety Improvement Program for pedestrian safety and improvements on 104th Avenue Southeast, which Council approved in October of 2022. In September of 2022, Council approved a $398,000 grant from WashDOT's Safe Routes to School program, which will be used to design and construct school zone flashers within 9 school zones. The King County Flood Control District awarded the city $225,000 for the James Street stormwater improvements, which was approved by Council in April of 2023. The city was awarded another grant from WashDOT's Highway Safety Traffic Improvement Program. This $111,000 grant will be used to design and construct safety improvements at the intersection of Canyon Drive and Wheeland Street, which Council approved in October of 2022. Also included in this amendment is an additional $25,000 grant from the State Washington Department of Ecology for Water Quality Stormwater Capacity Project. There was also a JAG grant for police that totaled $46,000 that will be used for expenditures related to canines, graffiti removal, and life skill classes. This increase in grants was offset by a $12,000 reduction to the illegal street racing project. So this was a grant from 2022 that is being trued up so that the budget for the revenues equals the actual amount received. And there is one budget reduction for grants for $282,000 for the 84th East Valley Highway Slump Repair budget. All of the eligible expenditures have been reimbursed by King County, and the budget is being reduced to match the actual amount spent. So lastly, the $398,000 that Council has yet to approve are for a $200,000 that is needed for the shop security project. So it's $100,000 being transferred out of the facilities fund, and then $100,000 will be used in the project. There's also a budget change that's needed for $106,000 for the police firing range project. $53,000 will be transferred out of the capital resources fund, and then $53,000 will be budgeted in the project. And then there is $83,000 needed budget for federal lobbyists. Overall, the federal lobbyist costs $100,000, but the street fund is able to do a net zero and just reduce one of their expenditures to add on the expense. And that's it.
Thank you, Michelle. I think Councilmember Thomas have a question, Michelle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Michelle, could you go into a little depth on the firing range for the police department?
Yes, they had a budget that was budgeted in 2022 or 23 for about $600,000, and this is just a little bit more they need to complete the project.
Okay, thank you.
Any other question for Michelle, team? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to ask for a motion, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to adopt ordinance number 4472, consolidating budget adjustments between April 1st of 2023 and June 30th of 2023, reflecting an overall budget increase of $4,638,240.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Let the record show unanimous pass. Thank you, Michelle. You might just want to stay up there, Priya. Okay. So we're going to move on to item number 6, which is information only, and this is the 2023 June financial. Michelle.
Yep. All right. So the June monthly report, there is not a whole lot of changes. Revenues and expenditures are coming in pretty much where we had budgeted them. Some are a little bit higher and a little underspending on expenditures, which is to be expected. So I've highlighted the sales tax, and as you can see, there's a large difference from 2022 to 23, but that was budgeted that way. We moved the capital resources portion that we had budgeted, and the sales tax we had budgeted in the capital resources fund into the general fund, so 100% of sales tax is receipted there now. And so it seems like we have a large increase, but it's actually the revenues are coming in almost at exactly the same amount they were at the same time last year. So we're not seeing any growth in sales tax, but it continues to come in very steady. So that's the good news. On this screen, the other taxes are highlighted. So other taxes would be the B&O tax, gambling, and admissions tax. So the majority of that's going to be B&O taxes. And so through June, the B&O revenues were coming in $380,000 higher than they were at the same time last year. The admissions taxes are coming in $71,000 higher, and the gambling taxes are coming in $13,000 higher. On this slide, these are all of the revenues that are in the general fund. So the ones highlighted in that kind of yellowy orange color are the ones that quite haven't hit that 50% of budget, and the blue ones are the ones that are quite a bit above. So for B&O, those taxes are received quarterly, and so they don't get receipted until July for the second quarter, so we'll see those numbers go up in the next report. Same thing for the other taxes. That's going to be the admissions tax, so the showwear admissions tax won't show up until the July closes. Licenses and permits, there was a bit of a change in how we receipt the fire permit revenues, and so we're kind of waiting for those to catch up. So within the next couple months, you're going to see that not be such a variance from budget to actuals. And then transfers in, those transfers are just done as needed, so those will kind of shake out by the end of the year. So highlighted in bluish color, the intergovernmental revenue, that one is higher than expected because ECD has received a grant from the Department of Commerce for their comp plan, and that has not been budgeted yet, but that will be budgeted before the third quarter closes. And then miscellaneous revenues, that is where we budget we budget everything that doesn't fit somewhere else, but for the majority, the reason it's so much higher is because of interest income. So far, through June, it is $1 million higher in interest income in the general fund than it was at the same time last year. And that's because of the interest rates. We're just seeing a lot higher, so it's good for us. On the other funds overview, I've highlighted the Capital Resources Fund and the Criminal Justice Fund. Those are the two on that page that have kind of the higher variances that we haven't talked about. So Capital Resources Fund, the revenues are coming in higher, and that was part of that shift in how we're budgeting the revenues. It's now a little over 50% of the, or about 50% of the property tax revenues now in the Capital Resources Fund, and the sales tax have shifted out of there. We would expect the revenues to be a little bit higher, but REIT has kind of just not come in where it has been in years past. It's only about third, we've only received about a third of the revenues that we had seen at last year at this time for that. And we kind of expect that trend to continue for the rest of the year. And for criminal justice, the revenues continue to come in strong there. There hasn't been a whole lot of changes on the red light cameras or the school zone cameras. Those are coming in where we thought. The revenues that are a little bit higher, that's for the sales tax that the criminal justice receives, as well as they do have a few $100,000 for seized funds that they also get receipted into the criminal justice fund. On this slide, the fleet services have been highlighted, and that is because the expenditures are a lot higher than you've seen in years past at the same time. And if you recall, during the Q1 adjustment, we carried forward quite a lot of money in vehicle costs because they were ordered in 2023, but they didn't get delivered yet. And so now those cars are starting to come in, and so we're seeing all those expenditures hit the budget. And lastly, the unemployment. When you look at the expenditures through June, it seems like compared to 2022 to compared to 2023, it's a large variance, but that was because 2022 was very low. But if you look at 21, it's coming in right at the same trends. And the increase in revenues is not because we've changed how much we get for that. Those revenues come in based on employees. The more employees we have, the more revenues that account sees. Are there any questions?
Any question? Oh, Councilmember Troutner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you said the entrance income is higher than we've expected.
Yes.
Do we anticipate that that will be even higher come the end of the year? Or do we see that kind of leveling off?
I would expect the same rate for the rest of the year, but it kind of depends what interest levels do, and those change.
And that's just money that right now will go into the general fund until...
It goes into all of the funds, have a portion depending on what their fund balances are.
Okay.
So all the funds are seeing an increase.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Keep up the good work, and thank you for the information. Appreciate it. Let's move on to item number 7. We got Derek Hawks from, discuss about the Federal Way Link Extension, staffing agreement. Sir.
Hey, good afternoon, Council. I got Derek Hawks with Public Works Design. I also have Mark Madfi with me today. I'm filling in for Kelly. He was unable to be here today. So pretty quick item. I don't have a PowerPoint presentation, but you have some stuff in your packet. This is a quick presentation on Federal Way Link Extension Staffing Agreement. So this is Amendment 1 to Task Order Number 2 of the City Services Agreement between the City of Kent and Sound Transit for additional funding of $1,750,000, again, for the Federal Way Link Extension Project. The City and Sound Transit approved a development agreement in 2018. Task Order Number 2 to the agreement it was previously approved for project review. It was approved by Council in June of 2019, and it provided reimbursement for city staff time and fees, both Mark and I's time, Kelly's time, ECD Permit Center, to get through the project, both in design reviews and also through project closeout. Task Order 2 provided agreement that Sound Transit will pay the city a fixed fee in the amount of $335,000 per quarter for 20 quarters for a total of $6.7 million. Again, that was for staff time and fees related to the project. Payments have been made on a quarterly basis, as noted in Attachment 3, which you should have. Last payment was scheduled to be due on the second quarter of 2024, when the Federal Way Link Extension Project was originally supposed to be beginning revenue service. Since the project was delayed, as a result, additional staff time is needed to complete the review of the project and continue the project forward. These delays include impacts from COVID, worldwide supply chain issues, labor disputes, soil conditions at Structure C, just south of 259th, and then scheduling of the opening of Federal Way Link Extension Project with other Sound Transit projects. So Sound Transit has proposed this amendment to Amendment 1 to Task Order Number 2, which provides for additional $1,750,000 to cover additional city costs, which will be made on a quarterly basis. Basically, there's 2 additional payments of $335,000 and 6 payments of $180,000. So that'll carry us through fourth quarter of 2024 4 is when the original project ended. This will carry us through to 2026 July. So again, eight more quarters of payments. Taking us from 6.7 to 1.75 million dollars. Total of 8.45 total. Happy to answer any questions that council may have.
So is this staff, is it full-time to Sound Transit, or is it just based on so many?
So this fee was negotiated with Sound Transit, and it was negotiated a while ago. Pat may know some more details on the exact numbers, how we got to those numbers, but this is for like part of my time. I
Right.
probably spend a third of my time on Sound Transit. Mark does the same. We got some other staff that are full-time. We got the permit center who's working constantly. So, and we just bill them the same amount quarterly. I think we've been trending maybe a little under that amount. So, this is a good deal for this.
Yeah, that's definitely a good deal. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. All right, thank you. All right, any questions, sir, for you guys? Any questions? Oh, Councilmember Fincher.
Thank you. I just wanted to reiterate, the rates are going to be the same. This is necessarily because the project is taking so long. But for us, we'll just continue as we have been.
Sounds good. Councilmember Fincher, want to make a motion?
Yes, thank you. I move to authorize the mayor to sign the amendment to Task Order Number 2, or Task Order 2, of the City Services Agreement between the City of Kent and Sound Transit for additional funding of $1,750,000, subject to final terms and conditions acceptable to the Chief Administrative Officer and City Attorney.
Are we sure? Okay, motion in a second, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, let the record show unanimous pass. Thank you, Derek, appreciate it. All righty. That was our last action item, so we are going to adjourn. Thank you.
fun.
Oh, already live, okay, good. All right, good afternoon, welcome to the City Council Workshop, okay? We got two items on our agenda tonight, FD CARES and the annual water system update. Are we up and ready? I'm sorry. Okay, we're gonna switch the order of how we present tonight. We're gonna have FD CARES go first, and then we will do the annual water system update after that. So, who's gonna kick us off from FD CARES? Okay, Commander O'Reilly.
Hello there. Good evening, Council President, Council members. Here to give you an update on how the co-responder program's been going with the FD CARES. It's been really good partnership so far. As you know, we've already been working with them for a number of years, and so really formalizing this relationship has been really fantastic. If you could, there you go. So just a little review. One of the needs that we have talked about with you on the council has been, we've been dealing with people in crisis, but maybe not necessarily committing crime, or maybe on the verge of getting there, right? And responding to these types of calls was a real drain on patrol officer resources, and this was at the same time that we were dealing with a real staffing crisis. Obviously, the clear benefits developing a co-responder program would help free up our officers so they can respond and be available to go to those high priority in progress crimes, and connects people in crisis with the people who can guide them towards the resources, right? And really to make connections early, so they don't get to the point where they're in crisis and people are calling 911 for assistance. And to close the loop is continued follow-up. Oftentimes when, an officer will go to a scene, it's see problem, fix problem, clear, go to the next. And by having our teams with the CARES team and having a nurse and a social worker on board, they have the luxury and the time for following up with that person for continued care. Just a reminder on some of the staffing availability. This is our most up-to-date picture of the CARES team. We've got teams in Kent, Renton, Tukwila, Skyway, Covington, Maple Valley, and SeaTac. It's 7 days a week, daytime hours between 8 and 8. 8 registered nurses, 6 social workers. Looking 8 and 8 by September, August-September timeframe. And Aaron, did we have any end-of-year projections on that? For any other increase in size?
Potentially, but they're looking at adding another unit up in the Tukwila area.
Yep.
And so we increased the staffing model by 2
Wonderful. Okay. One thing that was also really of benefit was they included us in the selection and the training process. And this was really great because it allowed us to be right there at the very beginning, with the boots on the ground. As they were bringing people in, we were participating and providing guidance in the training process, so to help them better connect and be able to work with our officers. One of the other things that we came up with is we wanted them to feel immediately part of our team, and so we were able to get them key card access, so they could come in, use the lunchroom, rub elbows with the officers, and so you get a lot of that organic conversation that comes up where people, although they've received training and things like that, it allowed our officers to connect with them and ask questions. And it could be, hey, I dealt with somebody last night. Can I ask you a question? Can you guys help with that sort of thing? So, daily communication. Sergeant Kelso, as our co-responder sergeant, works with them on a daily basis. Our officers can give referrals to them, and Sergeant Kelso is available to provide any more detailed data. It could be related to a case report from the night before, any other history that he can help the team with so they can better connect with the person in need. Also, Sergeant Kelso is able to share identified areas where we might need some directed patrol. So when they're not actively responding to a call for assistance with patrol or following up on a referral through their system, they know the areas where they can just be available and just be visible in, right? And this is about, like I said, the early contacts and those sorts of things. And obviously to coordinate co-responses and assistance. As you know, Sergeant Kelso is also our Special Operations Unit Sergeant. And so we deal with a lot of the homeless population who are often in need for a variety of reasons, whether it's homelessness, addiction, behavioral health issues, and we'll bring them along with us in a team environment. And so we'll figure out what the best time of the week to do it. As you know, we usually schedule out making contact at camps to provide resources. Working together, just one of the updates on how we do these things. We can respond in a number of ways. Obviously, co-responding, that's the typical one that you hear. And it might be going out to a camp or on a call where, hey, we're going out there today, we'd like you to join us. Or vice versa. Maybe they're going on a call and they think, hey, I'd like to have the police come with us. Or it could be where an officer's on a call and he or she is working with the problem and so he's calls for the CARES unit. They talk to him maybe on the phone, let him know, hey, this is what I'm dealing with. Can you come here and then I'll introduce you to the person. And maybe I'm going to hang out for a little bit just to make sure everything is good to go and safe, and then we'll leave. A cold handoff might be when we call them and it's John Doe and we explain, hey, John Doe is, oh, we already know John. We've dealt with him several times already. We have a good working relationship with him. This would be a good follow-up for us. You can go ahead and clear and respond to the next call. So that clears up the officer immediately. And then obviously, like I said, directed patrols. So Kent PD referrals through Julata. Julata is the system that we have our officers utilize to be able to make referrals. And this could be an after-hours situation where an officer's working night shift. They can use Julata just during the day. It's a quick and easy way for officers to refer them to. They've got a little handy-dandy card that they utilize. They can literally take their cell phone out and QR code it, and it pops up a few easy-to-fill-in blanks to make referrals. And this is between February and June, this data here. We had 22 referrals, 18 resulted in patient contacts. And so we had 29 total proactive visits, which resulted in, so you have 18 initial contacts, which then blossomed into 11 follow-up contacts afterwards. Unable to locate 4 of the patients referred. And if you look at the time frame here, we've got a little bit of work to do at our night shift. So, and these are just using the Julata system, right? This isn't the time where the officer gets on the air and says, hey, is CARES available? I'd like them to come meet me down at the library or something like that. And so we had 3 referrals at night. It's my plan to go and attend with some of our night shift, all of our night shift briefings actually, and retrain and talk about this. All of our officers received initial training on how to do the referrals. It's quick and easy. They've got the link on their website through their MDCs. They've issued cards and things like that. So I'm going to revisit that. Sometimes it's out of sight, out of mind. And so we're going to follow up with that. Co-response contacts. So these are situations where we're in the field and CARES is added directly by an officer. So that was 52 times. And then the next one is we're there with BLS and they were added directly by the police department, and then either us or the fire department team that was on site on the same call that we're added, that were dispatched to together, 7 times we pulled out CARES as well. Total referrals. So referrals generated by KPD officers, like we said on the last screen, added 59 times. And by the way, this picture right here is the very first CARES contact that we did earlier this year. So it's kind of cool that we were able to capture that. Total Kent PD referrals that generated patient interactions. So think proactive visits, phone contacts, attempted contacts, the whole kit and caboodle. That's up to 119. either through interactions or times when they've gone out and attempted to make contact. Sometimes they may not be able to find the person if it was a cold handoff, or sometimes when we go up to people, even our friendly people in the CARES unit, not everybody always wants to talk to us. 17 interactions resulted in patient declining assistance, just like I said. I put a note at the bottom here. Building trust takes time and ongoing communication. As you know, with anything with addiction, if you've had family members or friends, or if you watched any of these shows where they talk about addiction, it takes multiple times to really make that connection. Our people are great, and CARES is great, and sometimes it just takes time to build trust and sort of kind of navigate through, excuses or pitfalls that they may have. Primary needs identified for referral. This doesn't mean all of them. These are what was listed on the referral through the Gelada system. 32 times it was for behavioral health issues, 15 times for homelessness, and 7 times was for alcohol and drug use. Now realize some of those could be an and sometimes it's an or. And then other times the officers just might not have checked any of them. Okay. And so what I'd like to do before we get to the questions, we have these fine CARES people here that I'd love them to introduce themselves to you, and they've got a couple anecdotal stories that they'd like to share with you. Thanks. Nancy.
Hello, everyone. I'm Nancy Reynolds. I'm a social worker with Puget Sound Fire. I've been here since about 2015, and I've been a social worker for almost 20 years, and I love this. I've done a lot of work in many different areas, and this is one of my favorite spaces to work in because we work with people in populations that are vastly different. So I could tell you stories about like people experiencing homelessness, crisis intervention and suicidal ideation, with opioid addiction, with hoarding. We've done it all with Kent PD and with some of the outlying police departments. So you tell me what you want to hear.
Well, for me, I mean, I know we always heard the good side, right? I mean, but if you have to say what's not working, what could we improve upon to be better? I mean, I know we're getting just started with this whole process, but I mean, some of the early things you're seeing that if we could have this or do this, we could be better.
Perfect. Always room for improvement. So one of the biggest things about starting any program is getting through the hurdles of the communication piece and figuring out what works best. And so the process of Gelada is our data system that we use for our documentation. And so getting the police up to speed and how to use that and getting them to do one more thing in documenting, which is a lot because that takes away from their time with people, was difficult. And it still is a process for them to learn. So we've tried to streamline it. So that's something that we're trying to do. But I think it's more of just communication, like Commander O'Reilly said, like the evening shifts, like we talk to them and we see them for about 2 hours before we go home. But we know that there are people out there that have crisis in the evening time, or they need shelter or whatever else. And I think that's the biggest gap. But I mean, we're doing this right now. And I don't know, outside of that, I think that's like what pops into my head first, I guess.
Then I'm going to follow up with another question. So I can tell you're passionate about your job. I can see it. So since we start this joint venture, what story sticks out the most to you?
Oh, man. I mean, I love them. I mean, I have stories back from when Officer Ferguson was still here, like back in the day. That's my favorite story. But one of the most recent is we were called out. It was probably like 6:30 at night, and police added us to a 911 call at an apartment complex close to 7-4's area. And it was this lady, a young lady, probably 25, 26, and she has suicidal ideation. She's on medication, she has a therapist, but she was just very anxious. And the police officers that were there, they called us, they let us know what was happening. She had a boyfriend there, and she had a dog and everything like that, and they said, she doesn't meet the criteria to take her to the hospital. That won't do anything for her, other than have people ask her more questions that are intrusive, that aren't going to help her. It's just going to expose her more. And instead, they had us come, and we sat down. The nurse and I, that night, we sat down on the floor with her, talked for about 45 minutes to an hour, got her set up with a crisis counselor for the very next day, talked through a safety plan with her and her boyfriend, and we followed up the next day. And we went and saw her a few times after that, which is what I don't know these numbers, like, we follow up a lot. We make calls to resources, we call family members. It's a lot of background that we do after we see the patient. And that's the part we love, because we just want to show that we care about them.
Well, like I said, I could see the passion of what you have in this work, and really, really appreciate you and your story and all the work you guys doing. So I don't know, anybody like Councilmember Troutner, please?
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. I want to thank council, first of all, for moving forward with this contract, because we all agreed that it was something that we needed here in Kent, and we already see that it's making a big difference. So when you are working as a unit, how many people go out to a call? Is it 2 of you at a time? Is it more than that? Or do you have to deploy more people?
It depends
On what it is.
The answer, I guess, ma'am. So the team is a social worker and a nurse, and this is Amy. She's one of our registered nurses. And so we will get added by fire, or we'll get added by police, but we're always together. There's safety in numbers, and we're always added to the scene. We're never the first to a scene unless we're following up with a patient that we've already seen before. But so we initially go out with 2 people. Now, with CARES being a new program and everyone wondering what this is, and many cities around us doing these types of things, we often have ride-alongs, and that can be difficult because you want to show people what we're doing and teach people what they could do, but that's also kind of hard for patients, so it's a balance. So typically it's 2 people. Most of the time it's 2 people.
Well, and I know we have other cities, you hear about it, the more and more we talk about the CARES program, that are using what we're doing here as an example to get their programs up and running. So what you're doing, I think, is amazing. One more question, and I know the 3 of us, Councilmember Thomas and Council President Boyce, we're on the RFA board. So we get to hear from you all the time, or get to hear how things are going. How are you as far as staffed? Are you fully staffed? Are you currently looking for more people to support?
We are currently looking for more. So full staff right now for us is 8 nurses, 8 social workers, and we have 6 social workers. And we've grown immensely. Like Chief and our fire chief have they've been fantastic. We had 4 nurses earlier this year, or late last year, and we've grown a lot. But we need 2 more social workers to make us complete. And like Chief alluded to, we're looking to add more, so it'd be 10 and 10.
All right, thank you.
All righty. Councilmember Core, question?
Just a comment. I just wanted to thank you so much for doing this, and thank you, Commander O'Reilly, for your commitment to our community. I know when we initially talked about having a corresponder model a while ago for budget cycles, and it was difficult trying to figure out the funding, and I'm glad we were able to get through that hurdle and get this program going. So I can see your passion. I'm so excited you're out in the community, helping our community, because that's what matters. If you save one life, and you know that already, that it really matters. So I thank you so much for your work.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Councilmember Michelle?
Thank you, Council President. Thank you so much for being here. I'm wondering if you can give me an example or a story of a time that where you were out being proactive.
Yeah. One of my normal partners, Jacqueline, she's a registered nurse, and she has, like me, a passion for people that are experiencing homelessness. And so many times she's done a great job of getting clothes and other resources together, and we'll go out to Pier Kent and we'll do just outreach with patients. And so we've gotten to know a few people, and one day we were doing outreach out there, and we saw one of the officers that we work with a lot, and he was out there working with a person experiencing homelessness, and they were starting to get escalated because that person was not happy that they were being told that they had to move. But they needed to move because they were sleeping on the doorstep of a business. And so we walked over, and we knew that person because Jacqueline had done a lot of outreach in that space, and we were able to diffuse a little bit. We got that person to a location where they could do laundry because that's what was most needed for them in that moment. And we got them moved. So we helped that person, we helped the police officer, and everything turned out great that time. Yeah.
Councilmember Fincher?
Thank you. Love the CARES program, and I'll be glad when we get the nighttime shift staffed and up and running. For the 17 people who declined treatment, do you ever go back and try to talk with them again, offer treatment again, check in on them, or is it they're done? What happens at that point?
No, ma'am, we tend to try at least 3 times, depending on what type of interaction we get back from that person, sometimes no is no. But most of the time we try and follow up because as you know, like all of us human beings, we are not taught to accept help very well. Like I like to paint this picture where you're walking down the street and someone's painting their fence. You're like, hey, I've got time. I'll help you paint your fence. You want some help? And that person's going to be like, no, I've got it. Don't worry about it. Because they're set to do it all on their own. And then you walk by 2 hours later, they're still painting their fence. You're like, just pick up a paint roller and you start painting their fence. Like, hey, thanks. That's how we operate. You know, most of the time we don't just accept help because we need it. It's because we feel like we need it. And then those times. So we always try and go back, but it just depends on the person, you know. And having it the direct, like meeting that person in that moment of crisis when we're added to the call is when we find to be most effective with people because they feel what they are lacking in that moment or what's their fear, their anxiety, or whatever they're feeling. They have that, and they're more open to have follow-up after that. But, yeah.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, registered nurse. I'm sorry, what's your name again?
Hi, my name's Amy Skelton, and I'm a registered nurse, so I'm one of the nurses with the CARES team, and I have been here since November.
Anything you want to share with us to talk about?
I would love to. This is like a dream job. It really is. It's just with the amount of help that we can give people, it's very gratifying and it's amazing. But thinking of stories, I mean, I can just think of like 2 in the past week, I'd say. Something as simple as being added to a call for a gentleman that was experiencing homelessness, and he was also he was needing a shelter for that night. He stayed in the park normally, but he was ready to go to a shelter that evening, and so we were added to the call, and we were able to find him a shelter, and we talked to him about his substance use issues, and he was hoping to maybe start the road to recovery for that. And so just that's a common call that we get, you know, people that are needing a shelter. And so something as simple as that. And then something a little different, again, in the last week, this was a woman who was feeling suicidal, and we were added to the call by fire, but they connected us with PD. And PD was happy that the CARES team were there. It was, again, a social worker and a nurse, hoping that if this patient needed any mental health help after they were able to talk to her, we would be there. And they were also hoping that it was a female, so they were thinking maybe a female talking to a female would help. And so it can be kind of as a severe situation like that, or something as a little bit more common as finding somebody a shelter or a recovery program. But very happy to be here.
I like to see your passion too, right? So that's a big part of the job, doing something that you love and you're passionate about, really. And those are the type of people that we need in that position. So I just want to say kudos to you. I know we as a council member up here, we really appreciate everything you guys do. And I think Councilmember Fincher mentioned something about starting the night crew. I mean, that's something that we probably need to think about so we can have this 24-hour service. So, but Chief Tyerman, I know you're back there pretty quiet, but we also appreciate you and your leadership with this here as well too. And Commander Riley, just the team working together, because that's how we can make this thing work, is working together as a team. And sound like we got a good partnership. We want to continue to expand on that and grow on that. So I just want to say thank you and appreciate it. Have a great day. Thanks again. Okay, we're going to get started here. Sean, you ready to go, sir?
I sure am.
Let's do it.
Thank you, Council President. Council, thanks for your time tonight. Every year around this time, we like to come in and provide you with information on what's going on within the water system. It's nice and warm outside, so people are thinking of pools and water. Today, Kevin Swinford, the Public Works Utility Site and Process Control Manager, and I will touch on water supply, water quality, challenges we face, projects we've completed since the last time I was here, and projects we're working on. So our water supply sources have been in good shape this year. We had a wet enough fall and winter that our groundwater sources were able to recharge sufficiently, and before the drier weather during the late winter, spring, and so far the summer has set in. Since January, precipitation has been approximately 33% of average, not very much. Staff operate and maintain 16 wells, 2 springs, and our surface water supply with the Tacoma Regional Water Supply System. For our Tacoma Green River supply, snowpack was about 108% of normal this year, which is good, a lot of snow, but it melted off faster than normal. However, the Corps was able to still capture what was needed to reach a full storage behind the pool for our municipal use back on June 24th. We began using the stored municipal water behind the dam on June 3rd when the minimum river flows were reached on the Green River at the Palmer Gauge, which is near the Tacoma Treatment Facility. And a statewide drought advisory was issued this year early as well by the Department of Ecology on July 5th. Or a drought advisory, excuse me, a drought emergency was issued a few weeks later on the 24th of July for parts of 12 counties, but it doesn't include King or Pierce County. And what I've heard is the 3 big municipal suppliers, Tacoma, Seattle, and Everett, are also in good shape because of the snowpack. Water system demand was mostly average for the beginning of the year. Then it transitioned to above our 5-year weekly maximum early in June for a period of weeks. And since then, it's been just kind of hovering between average and just below our 5-year max. Our peak day demand so far this summer season has been 11.9 million gallons per day, but as I mentioned, it's pretty hot out there. We'll see what it looks like at the end of this week. For our Tacoma Regional Water Supply System, the Howard Henson Dam Additional Water Storage Project continues to move forward. In 2022, the Water Resources and Development Act, or WRDA, included the authorization for the project. And so now that it's got approval, now it need to work on funding. So the project did receive $220 million in funding from the Infrastructure Investments and Jobs Act. And currently there is an additional $50 million included in both the Senate Appropriations and President Biden's 2024 budget proposal. So there's money there, but there's still about $670 million needed to fund the complete project by 2025. The Corps has been working on testing and data collection to help with the design, and we'll begin working on geotechnical work for the design starting in September. So they're starting to put everything together. They need to start working on the design. So the remaining timelines are to initiate pre-construction, engineering, and design by 2025, get those completed by the end of 2027, and go to construction and have construction completed by 2030. And then the goal is to have fish passing through the new fish passage facility by 2031. Our annual water quality report was completed in June and made available to our water users. A postcard was delivered to customers letting them know the report was ready to view and provided them the link to view it, and also gives them the opportunity to call and request a hard copy if they'd like it. We have a few of those that we mail out. The report contains information on where our water comes from, how it's treated, and what was found in the water through testing for the previous year. We also take the opportunity to pass on information relating to wellhead protection, water conservation, water use efficiency, our cross-connection control program, water system accomplishments, kind of like we'll go over here tonight, and things we're working on.
I got a quick question for Councilmember Troutner, Sean.
Thank you, Council President. How many people actually request a hard copy, or can you, obviously you can see how many people are actually getting on and looking in? I'm just curious.
I would have to reach out to IT to track. I know that usually when the postcard first comes out, there's a rush and say 20, 25 requests for them to be mailed. It's not a lot. But we also have our survey that continues every year. And so after the water quality report, we'll start getting customer surveys back too electronically. And back in the day, we would see 100, 200 of those, and now we'll see maybe 15, 20 a year. So
Thank you. You don't have to find out that number. I just was curious to know how many people actually request it. Thank you.
When I was here last year, I reported that we collected our first round of sampling for PFAS chemicals at our sources, and we found 2 small detections, one at our East Hill well source and one at our Kent Spring source. At East Hill, we saw a detection of perfluorobutane sulfonic acid, or PFBS, easier to say, at a level of 2.1 0.17 parts per trillion, and the state action level for that contaminant is 345. So although it was detected, it was just barely above the 2 that they could detect down to, and well below the state action level, but it was there. And at Kent Springs, we saw a detection of perfluorosulfonic acid, or PFOS, at a level of 2.28 parts per trillion. The state action level for that one is 15 parts per trillion. So we resampled those 2 sources earlier this year, and we had no detections found at Kent Springs, so that one that had the 2.28 had none detected this time. However, East Hill did show up again, and a little bit higher. It was at 3.7 parts per trillion. Currently, the Environmental Protection Agency is working on setting federal maximum contaminant levels for PFAS chemicals. Once those are set, they'll supersede what the state action levels are that we're following, and the Department of Health will adopt those. From what I've seen, they follow the state action levels pretty closely. There's some that are a little bit lower and some a little bit higher, but for the most part, it's what we're following already. The lead and copper rule revision went into effect in January of 2021. It requires water systems to complete a service line inventory of pipe material on water services that are 2 inches in size or less, and on both the public and private portions of the water system, or of the water service. Then submit that inventory to the Department of Health by October 2024. We're currently working through a data search to populate our inventory, and we'll work on any field verification needed once that's complete. The inventory document will be updated annually as new information is found through pipe replacements and service line work. We had a meeting today on this. We have a weekly standing meeting on this today, and GIS has been so great to work with. They were able to import King County data into the GIS, into a GIS layer, along with our inventory and the age of our water lines in the ground, and it's able to show us the different stages that we have to look for. And so 1951 and older are the ones we're looking for, because if there's going to be a lead gooseneck or a lead service line, it's going to be pre-1951. And so in looking at the data that has come out of that new GIS layer, it looks like there's about 832 that we're actually going to have to go physically look at to verify whether there's lead or not. So great work by them. Also, at the end of this data collection, we'll have to have an outward-facing platform created so that customers can go online and look and see what they have and what is serving them. So they're working on that, and they'll have that populated by the October deadline. And then also, once the inventory is completed, it'll help us reevaluate our lead and copper sampling plan and be able to select sites that maybe are a criteria that we should include that we didn't know about before. So we're working on that. There's a new rule in the Washington Administrative Code requiring a new chapter on climate change be included in water system plan updates. Previously, impacts were looked at and discussed in the water system plan, but there wasn't a dedicated chapter to it. So things like drought, heat waves, changing rain patterns, lower snowpack, flooding, forest fires, things of that nature will be looked at and their impact to individual water systems. From there, it's how do you adapt or mitigate these impacts. House Bill 1329 was signed into law this legislative session and went into effect July 23rd. It restricts water and electric utilities from shutting off service due to non-payment when there's an excessive heat warning in effect, and turning on previous turn-offs at the same time. So kind of like the situation we're in right now, there's an excessive heat warning out there, so there would be no shutoffs. Utility billing has implemented procedures to meet these requirements. If there's a chance that an alert is going to be issued around the time of a scheduled shutoff period, the turnoffs will be canceled and rescheduled for a later date. So this is similar to what other utilities are doing. In gross second substitute, House Bill 1110 also was passed this year. This bill increases middle housing in areas traditionally dedicated to single-family residential. The areas shaded in yellow on this map indicate single-family residential areas in Kent. Infrastructure is sized based on demand and fire flow. So as the density increases and the use changes, the infrastructure will need to follow. So this will mean larger water mains in areas that were traditionally smaller. So those are the things that are kind of affecting us. Now we'll kind of go over some of the accomplishments that have happened since we were here last year. In addition to our routine maintenance activities like main cleaning, fire hydrant exercising, distribution valve exercising, things of that nature. Our Rock Creek culvert replacement project was completed earlier this year. This project replaced 3 side-by-side culverts that were non-fish friendly in Rock Creek on the Summit Landsberg Road out near our Clark Springs source in the Maple Valley Four Corners area. The project was a habitat conservation measure in our Clark Springs Habitat Conservation Plan, or HCP. Our HCP is a 50-year agreement with National Marine Fisheries Service and the United States Fish and Wildlife Service to guarantee our water right certainty for 50 years for our Clark Springs source. And in that HCP, it prescribes measures to improve fish habitat. So this was one of the bigger projects, and I was really excited to see this one get done. It turned out really nice. HCM 8 is another conservation measure out of our HCP. HCM 8 consisted of riparian acquisitions and enhancements in the Rock Creek Basin. The city acquired the final 2 properties that bisect Rock Creek over the past 2 years and finished the demolition and site restoration of those 2 properties. Enhancements to Rock Creek, which you can see in the map there. I don't know if I can, I don't want to mess this up. No, I can't get to go. You'll see the creek goes through those properties, so we are working on enhancing the shore around the creek on both sides. So this year they went in, they hand pulled all of the blackberry bushes. So that's the first step. Now this fall they'll go in and they'll start planting native vegetation, and then that project will be complete. And a request was submitted for approval from the resource agencies to get approval that this satisfies our commitment under HCM 8. Phase 1 of the State Route 516 road widening project out in Covington was completed this year. Phase 1 included the relocation of our Clark Springs transmission main. This was one of the many projects that impacted how we use or were able to use our water sources over the past year. Staff did a great job this year coming up with solutions to obstacles or not normal operating parameters. During the 10-day shutdown for this new transmission main tie-in, staff used our Tacoma connection point to move water from our Kent Springs transmission main back into our Clark Springs transmission main through an intertie with our mains at our Seven Oaks well facility around Kent Kangley and 116th area. And Kevin will touch on our 6 million gallon one project here in a little bit, but at the same time, that tank was down for a painting project. So it really created a challenge for us. The water section is responsible for locating all city-owned buried utilities. This includes water, sewer, storm, traffic signal runs, street lights, things of that nature. The software that we use to receive locate tickets from the 811 center was no longer going to be supported, so we worked with IT, our tech services group, and GIS to select a new program. And Utilisync 811 was the system that staff selected. Utilisync is fully integrated with our CityWorks asset management program and our GIS system. It allows us to integrate photos, communicate with the locate requester. We can communicate back and forth with them, questions, things of that nature. And it also gives us the ability to provide them with what we call positive response. Once the locate is completed, we can send them a notification that we have completed our locate so they know they can proceed. In 2022, staff performed 8,641 locates, and as of July, the end of July this year, we've already completed 4,352 locates. That's all the pretty paint you see along the roads. Mm-hmm. Our in-house construction projects, we call it Shop Sync. So far this year, we've installed 8-inch water main up on Southeast 276th Street between 116th and 118th up in the Derbyshire neighborhood on Kent's East Hill. And they're putting the finishing touches up on laying some 12-inch water main on State Avenue down here in the valley between East Smith and Pioneer Street. For our contractor bid water main projects this year, the contractor is wrapping up 3 water main crossings up on 104th at 220 Southeast 226, Southeast 228th, and Southeast 232nd, also up on the East Hill. And they'll be moving down to State Avenue north of where we were working between East James and East George Street to install a 12-inch water main there next. And with that, I will turn the updates over to Kevin Swinford.
Good afternoon, Council President and members of council. Thank you. Appreciate this. I don't get very many opportunities to do this, so I'm quite honored.
Alrighty.
All right, I'm going to try to make this short and sweet. Sean set the bar. West Hill Reservoir, 2022-2023 really was an amazing year for us for capital improvement projects and internal projects as well. Just my background real quick before we move. I am Public Works and your Utility Site and Process Control Manager. So I have 13 members, technicians, water quality staff that report to me that manage what I'm about to show you. So West Hill Reservoir, there was a lot that happened there. That was a several-year project. Construction of the West Hill reached substantial completion this summer, and the reservoir was filled. Controls were tested. Water quality samples were taken, and on June 14th, we put that 4 million gallon reservoir into service. And you can almost see, well, you can see it from Tacoma if you look the right direction. It is a beautiful piece of work. There's a final walkthrough coming up here very shortly, so you know there'll be a few small items that we need to address, but it is substantially completed. The contractor was T. Bailey, and between T. Bailey, our contractor services, and our internal staff, this was probably one of the better projects I've been involved with. So it was really quite a treat to see. Another challenge in 22-23 was 6 million gallon tank number 1. This resides up on the Kent East Hill, right around 98th, just below Fred Meyer. It went through a substantial recoating and structural improvements on the exterior and interior, and it was much needed. The coating inside and outside the tank, again, and structural improvements. We put a rain gutter. This was one of the first retrofit rain gutters we put around the perimeter of our water tank. You can barely see it in the upper left-hand picture. Now that rain gutter collects water off the roof of the reservoir and prevents it from sliding down the sidewalls, okay, which creates streaks, and it just creates kind of a maintenance nightmare, and aesthetically it's not very pleasing. So we're really excited to see how well this works. In addition, DOH requirement is a overflow gap. So when the tank overflows, if it ever overflows, we have to have that gap. We also put a new flow meter in, and we put a sample station in at 2 different levels, so our water quality staff can go in and sample that water at a couple different levels. So great improvements there. Pump Station 6. Pump Station 6 is just downstream of the West Hill Reservoir. This station was brought online in the mid-'80s, and it was designed just to create an artificial pressure zone. So those 3 drives right there ran 24/7 and artificially created the 587 zone. The 587 zone is now your West Hill tank. This site was modified to fill that tank. So instead of running 24/7, it's an on-off feature now. So it turns on when we tell it to, and it turns off when the tank is full. So that was another piece of the project with a lot of internal effort. You've probably heard this before, supervisory control and data acquisition. What the heck is that? SCADA. That's part of my group as well. So one of the improvements, several improvements in the SCADA side of things to include server upgrades. These things were very old. They were around 2008. So they were in need of replacement. Win 911. Win 911 is what calls our phones. So we have thousands of alarms that are monitored 24/7. The Win 911 piece of the software is the piece that connects the real world to our phones. and alarms us 24/7 if there's a problem. We worked with IT on separating the SCADA system from the city network. That was critical. I heard stories of bad people getting into networks, city networks and SCADA networks through HVAC systems. So it was a big deal to get it off the network. Radio upgrades. This was another struggle especially with COVID, trying to get our radios in. We've got 52 radios that we need to replace. These radios communicate real-world information to our control center, okay? And I just actually put my hands on the last 24 radios that were delivered a few weeks ago. So hallelujah, we're moving forward with that one. Water treatment and chemical feed, another group that we oversee. A lot of improvements to chlorine feed equipment, fluoride feed equipment, chemical feed monitoring equipment between 22 and 23. And when sites are taken offline, that is a great time for the groups to go in and to do this type of maintenance and replacement. This was another neat project that we did internally. Clark Springs and Kent Springs chlorine shut-off valves. Those yellow devices you see right there turn off chlorine tanks that feed chlorine gas for disinfection in less than 1 second if there's a leak detected. So this was a much-needed improvement that we just completed. So all the sites that are regularly online with chlorine gas have these devices now. So if a leak's detected, they immediately shut off. So that was another great improvement. The following is a list of projects that are in progress or scheduled to start in the coming years. Sean touched on the SR 516. So if anybody drives east out to Covington, you've been stuck in this. Okay, we have 2 water mains, one on the north side, the green line, one on the south side. Last year, they relocated the Clark Springs main on the north side, and I'll tell you, that was quite a challenge bypassing that water. We take about 4 million to 5 million a day out of that source, so we had to find a workaround. Currently, the line that's on the bottom, on the south side, is being moved as we speak, and we have got that water rerouted, and we're hoping within the next week to week and a half, we'll have that piece completed, and we'll be done with that project. Lower half of the screen is Armstrong Springs Watershed. We have 2 municipal wells right there, and they will also be tied into both transmission mains, so it'll give us some options for sourcing. Sodium hydroxide. We use sodium hydroxide to balance pH, to raise pH generally. Pump Station 5 in East Hill Well have these tanks, and they are at the 20-25 year life expectancy, so we are going to be replacing the tanks and going through some seismic upgrades to include tank clips and some flexible couplings. So that's a much needed improvement as well. 212th Treatment Plant, which is located right over the Valley Freeway. This plant came online in the early 90s, and I was very young in the early 90s, and I was able to watch this whole thing come to fruition. But we're past a lot of useful life with components. So we are going to be working towards replacing filters within the pressure filters on the right-hand side. We've got air actuators that we need to replace. There's a whole host of improvements that we're going to be doing internally. It's going to be a combination effort, internally and externally. West Hill, transmission main and booster pump station. We are probably looking to go construction sometime in 2025. This is going to take water out of the valley floor, move it up Veterans Drive to a new water main along Military. This will be the new feed for the West Hill tank. So that pump station 6 I showed you earlier, that'll go to sleep. So, and we will start to move water. Traditionally, we move water from the valley floor, and we stair step it up the West Hill to our customers at the very top. We're going to fill that tank, and we're going to let that water feed downhill. So it's going to be a brand new event that we've never been involved with. Water main replacements. Sean is very versed in this. These are going to be replacements in 2023, and he touched briefly on this. If you have any additional questions, again, he's more versed than I am on this one. PLCs, you've heard PLCs before. You wonder what the heck these are. They're magic little boxes that control. I have about 52 sites remotely, and we're in the process of systematically going through and replacing every one of these little controllers. These controllers are the heartbeat of all the remote stations. They give us flows, pressures. They tell us when a door is open. They tell us if something fails. So it's critical that we keep these up and running. And they will interface with these new radios I was speaking about just a few minutes ago. Safe, reliable, and water at your service. What do you think? How'd I do? Quick enough? Are there any questions?
Outstanding presentation. They kind of energized us, so thank you so much. Not that you didn't, Sean, but that was good. So, any question, team? What's some of the challenges you guys having, I guess, with this here? I mean, it's like a huge project, especially talking about taking the water and moving upstream. I mean, what's some of the challenges you have with doing a project like that?
Councilmember Boyce, that is a really good question. If we had all night long, I would, I could show you in diagrams what we did. But again, 22 and 23 were really challenging in that we have two primary transmission mains that come from the Maple Valley Black Diamond area, and they feed a tremendous amount of water. When you shut those down, you have to figure out a way to work around that loss of water. A combination between ingenuity, putting our thinking caps together, utilizing Tacoma water, utilizing our treatment plant that's down in the valley, feeding water backwards up the hill. Those were all challenges we faced in 22-23. We did something very unique that's never been done in the history of Kent before, is we actually physically took water out of, how did we do this now? We had Clark Springs down for so long because of the tie-in that we had to refresh that water. How are we going to do that? We had to take that water and push it to an area where we could get rid of the old stagnant water. So we backfed a source out near the Playmore Tavern, which is called Kent Springs.
Yep.
And we backfed water from Clark all the way back through Kent with only about 50 feet ahead. And we moved it down miles and miles of transmission main. And conceptually, the science said we could do it. And then when it happened, you could hear the cheers over the radio. I mean, you could hear the cheers over the phone. They're like, we did this. We did this. So those were just a few of the challenges that we had to make. We had to make some very unique chemical feed challenges as well. So it was an interesting year and a half, 2 years.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Councilmember Michaud, followed by Fincher.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you for this presentation. There's so much that's going on that we don't even know about. So great job. Especially great job on the conservation work that no one ever hears about. Good job. I mean, just doing the work.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Sean, I have a question for you. You mentioned during excessive weather events that shutoffs have to get turned back on. Is that correct? So
Yeah, so
sounds like a lot of work.
during an excessive heat warning, if there are scheduled shutdowns for non-payment, they will be moved to a different date. Anybody that has been turned off for non-payment prior to that, they can request to have their water turned back on. And customer service staff will go out and turn the water back on.
So it's not just automatically turned on, you need to request. Oh, okay, that makes more sense. Thank you.
Councilmember Sherk said there's a lot we don't know, but we do know we get good water in Kent. That's one thing we do know. Councilmember Fincher.
Thank you. How do people know that they can request to have their water turned back on in a hot weather event?
Is working on. I'm not sure if they've done direct mailings or it's new. It just went online in July.
Okay. Whenever there are articles in the news about water, some sort of water problems in other cities or states, or for instance, when one of our neighboring water districts that services, not the Kent water, but they had PFAS in their water. Do we get more calls checking or requests for reports at that time, or just kind of sails on by people? They don't realize?
No, I keep waiting for the calls to come. We get notifications from the EPA, from the Department of Health, advising us, that this announcement or this story is going to be coming out and just giving you a heads up. And so we're ready, and we don't get any calls. So we've been pretty fortunate that we haven't been impacted by this. I'm glad we're not, because it's quite expensive to install treatment to remove it if you have to. So if you're one of those impacted systems, there's funding options that are going to be coming out from 3M and different companies that have contributed to this problem that will be financing treatment systems and things of that nature, but we won't have that problem so far.
And then finally, I want to just pass on a compliment from a couple of the West Hill folks on how nice the tower looks.
It turned out really nice.
Yes.
Awesome. Councilmember, any other questions? Hey, Chad, that outstanding presentation from you and your team, not from you, from your team. Outstanding presentation, so really appreciate it. Chad, any word before we close it today?
I think Kevin said it. You have a great water staff. Kevin doesn't look like it, but he's been here for 37 years. Wow. So that kind of institutional knowledge is really important to us. And these two are doing a great job of training up the staff that work for them in understanding the system and getting to that point where we're able to keep automatically getting water. Everybody just turns on the tap and it makes it. And so we're proud to be able to deliver it that way.
Awesome. Kevin, if you don't have your succession plan in place, you may be here for another 37 years, okay? So,
My wife is working on that.
oh, okay. Hey, all right, I'll leave that one alone. Hey, outstanding presentation, guys. Thank you so much. Team, we're going to adjourn for dinner.